It's time to start now this workshop. This workshop is entitled as Bread and Whole Grains from Paximadia and the Delicious Art of Long Fermentation to mechanisms involved in the reduction of chronic disease and healthy longevity. And in Greek, ψωμιά και δημητριακά ολικής άλυσης, από τα Παξιμάδια και τη τέχνη της αργής ζύμωσης, έως τους μηχανισμούς που συμβάλλουν στη μείωση των χρόνιων νοσημάτων και την υγιή μακροζωία. So, this session is going to be in English. So for anyone that needs a translation, we will have one. But please be as quiet as you can be in order to help the translator to make it easier for her. So, today we will explore bread. Bread is one of the oldest and actually most significant food in human history. And we are going to explore it through the lens of both science and tradition. Bread is something more than food for everyone. It is actually it is a memory, it is a ritual, it is a culture. From the ancient Paximadia of Greece until the loaves that have raised a lot of families, actually bread connects humans across generations and across geographies. Yes, yet it is also a site of innovation, as in many years now there are many practices like long fermentation that is now connected with the research on chronic diseases and by making one food better for our health and perhaps even our healthy aging. So today's workshop sits in the intersection of tradition, of science and of public health, addressing many questions that are very important and increasingly urgent in today's world. So in this project, in this workshop, we are going to answer some questions which refer to the public health impact of bread, of whole grains and the fermentation practices that are being addressed in this bread making art. Many chronic diseases such as heart diseases or diabetes or different kinds of cancers are the leading causes of death globally. And that's why diet is a very important field that must be actually be addressed. Whole grains are one of the most consistently protective dietary components, and therefore in this workshop, understanding how whole grains and how fermented breads influence health, we can actually guide a better dietary guidelines and actually make better personal eating choices. We are going to make a revival of the traditional nutrient-rich food, and specifically in Paximadia and in grains. Modern bread making has often prioritizes speed and shelf life over nutrition and digestibility, and this workshop highlights actually to the art of long fermentation and traditional grains such as Paximadia, which offer a superior flavor, makes a better, improves our gut health and has fewer additives to the final products. Bread is something more than food, as we already said, and it has a cultural heritage, and foods like fermented breads or Paximadia or dakos, which are traditional foods in Greek diet and the Mediterranean place also. It is a heritage which is deeply tied to our local identity and to our agricultural traditions, and therefore preserving these practices today throughout both research and the markets. It is a legacy that we have to keep it and to make it relevant to other modern markets in order to be in our lives more easily. And finally, this workshop actually is a crossroad between different sciences. It's not only a scientific or a baking seminar. Actually, we bring together many different people from different fields in order to make a dialogue across between nutrition science and the culinary craft, between the academia and the entrepreneurship, and between tradition and innovation. Therefore, we are gathered here all today, constellating a unique expert field people from the science to the baking artists, and they will bring together the past and the present and the future of food, and how whole grains and long fermentation actually will be a better dietary for us choice in order to have a better metabolic health, to have even a better lifespan. So, the today's experts that are going to take to lead this workshop are from start Dr. Frank Hu. Dr. Frank is a professor in nutrition and epidemiology and chair of the Department of Nutrition at the Harvard Chan School of Public Health and a professor of medicine in Harvard University. So Dr. Hu will begin his session by diving into the scientific evidence, linking whole grain consumption to the reduced risk of chronic disease and improved longevity. So his work has shaped dietary guidelines globally, and today he brings us to the latest insights from nutrition science. So Frank, you can start.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction. Let me. This is not. Is this mine? No, this is not mine. This is yours, huh? Okay. All right. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to give a quick overview about the science behind whole grains, including the healthy bread we're going to taste today. And first of all, what is whole grain? So this is the official definition of whole grain by the US government. So the whole grains are cereal grains that consist of three structures: the brine, and the endosperm, and the germ. So when cereal grains are refined or polished, typically the brine and the germs are removed. Only the endosperm is retained. So what's exactly in those three structures? Most of the fiber is actually contained in the brine. So if you remove the brine, then most of the fiber will be gone. And most of the fatty acids are in the germ. So if the germ is removed, then the beneficial essential fatty acids are removed. So what's in the endosperm? The endosperm is mostly starch. So that's what you get in the white flour if you remove the brine and the germ. That's the difference between refined grains and whole grains. So the refined grains contains only the starchy part. When you consume this kind of grains, refined grains, it will create big blood sugar spikes because the starch can be easily digested and absorbed. When you eat whole grains, because it has all the three components, you have fiber, you have the starch, you have the essential fatty acids, minerals, and antioxidants, so that the digestion is typically slower, and the glucose, the blood sugar response is much smoother, much more smooth. And those are some examples of whole grains. Of course, we have whole wheat bread, we have steel-cut oats, brown rice, barley, rye, quinoa. So there are many different choices of whole grains. There was some misperceptions about whole grains, and sometimes you see multigrain on the packet. Not all multigrains are whole grains. So some multigrains are whole grains, but some whole multigrains can be also refined bread. And you cannot identify whole grains by just the color. So in the US, we have a lot of brown bread. The brown bread is not necessarily whole grain bread. And also, not all whole grain bread are minimally processed. Actually, most of the whole wheat bread in the US is highly processed. And then today we're going to talk about Paximadia and sourdough. And as Polina just mentioned, Paximadia is a traditional Cretan twice-baked bread. It's very nutrient-dense, used to be consumed by shepherds and farmers. And bread, of course, is not just food, it's a cultural heritage, and it's part of the Mediterranean diet. And the long fermentation versus short fermentation, in terms of health benefits, long fermentation has much more health benefits because long fermentation produce certain compounds that are beneficial for health, like organic acid, peptides, bioactive compounds, support gut health, and also reduce glycemic response. So this is a quick comparison of 4 different kinds of bread. So the white bread that you get from the supermarket, and whole wheat bread you can also get supermarket, and also from bakeries, and the sourdough bread, and then the Paximadia. Paximadia is also a type of a sourdough bread. So the major difference, of course, is the fermentation. So for the white bread, commercial white bread, the fermentation is very short. It's only 1 or 2 hours using commercial yeast. And then whole wheat bread, whole grain bread is typically short or moderate fermentation, but it has more fiber, more essential fatty acids, more minerals and antioxidants compared to the white bread. And then the sourdough is a long fermentation, 12 to 48 hours. And the Paximadia is also non-fermentation, and then it's twice baked, so that's why it's so dry, crunchy. And in terms of health effects, white bread typically has the highest glycemic index. As I just mentioned, once you consume white bread, it will raise your blood sugar very quickly. And then the whole wheat bread typically has lower glycemic index, and it has more fiber. And then the sourdough has even lower glycemic index, and the Paximadia has the lowest glycemic index and also has more bioactive compounds produced by the yeast or the bacteria. Many studies, including clinical trials and epidemiology studies, have investigated the health effects of whole grains. The results have been very consistent. So most studies have shown that if you consume whole grains regularly, there is significant benefit in terms of preventing type 2 diabetes, reducing risk of cardiovascular disease, and improving healthy aging. And in this study, we found that when people increase their whole grain consumption, there is a reduction in all-cause mortality, cardiovascular mortality, and cancer mortality. And recently, we published a study on optimal dietary patterns and healthy aging. Here, healthy aging is not just about living longer, but also living better with good cognitive function, mental health, and the physical function. So what we found is that some foods promote healthy aging. They have an anti-aging effect. Some foods have pro-aging effect, means that they accelerate aging. So for the anti-aging foods, we have fruits and vegetables, whole grains, nuts, legumes, fish, olive oil, moderate wine, tea, and coffee. In the pro-aging column, so we have processed meat, excess red meat, refined grains and starches, sugary beverages, fast food, too much sodium, excess alcohol, and trans fat. So there are clear differences between those two categories of food. And the whole grains belong to the anti-aging food, and the refined grains and starches belong to the unhealthy food group. And then recently we looked at quality of carbohydrates and healthy aging. And what we found is that high quality carbohydrates like fruits and vegetables and legumes are beneficial for healthy aging, whereas low quality carbohydrate like high glycemic index food, refined grains like white bread typically have high glycemic index, and then the ratio high carbohydrate to fiber ratio is also associated with decreased likelihood for healthy aging. So this kind of food typically have reduced content of fiber and have increased starchy component. So again, these are mostly refined carbohydrates like white bread and bagels and sweets. So again, I think it's very important to look at different quality of carbohydrate foods. And then fiber, all type of fiber are beneficial in promoting healthy aging. Can say that fruit fiber, vegetable fiber, cereal fiber, they're all beneficial. So it's very important to increase the amount of fiber in our diet. And those traditional bread, sourdough and Paximadia, have much higher fiber content compared to white bread. And then have biomarkers that can be used to reflect your whole grain intake. So one of the most commonly used biomarkers is called alcohol. You can measure in the blood, in your blood, and the higher amount of this biomarker means that you are eating more whole grains like whole wheat, rye, barley. And then you can also measure gut microbiota metabolized in urine samples to reflect your whole grain intake. And in this study, we measured those metabolites in thousands of participants. We found that the higher levels of those metabolites, the lower risk of diabetes. Again, those metabolites are objective biomarkers of whole grain intake. And this is another study. We found that if you have higher levels of those metabolites, you would have reduced risk of cardiovascular disease. So the point I want to make is that the evidence has been very strong, very consistent, based on either self-reported whole grain intake or based on objective biomarkers, because we know that self-reported dietary intakes are not perfect and they have a lot of noises. So that's why you also need to use objective biomarkers to capture dietary habits. So these are the take-home messages. First of all, you have to understand what are the whole grains. So they contain all three components, bran, germ, and endosperm. And then the current consumption of whole grains, at least in the US population, is very low. It's less than 1 serving per day on average. And whole grains have many health benefits on diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, mortality, and healthy aging. So I think healthy aging is a very important endpoint, because, again, we're talking about not just living longer, but also living better with higher quality of life. Whole grains can promote healthy aging. That means that improve longevity and also improve quality of life. And the good news is that there are many different sources of whole grains. So today we're talking about healthy whole grain bread, but you can also get other types of whole grains like oats, rye, brown rice, barley, quinoa, and so on and so forth. And the reason today we talk about the Paximadia and the sourdough because they may have additional health benefit beyond regular whole grains because of the long fermentation. And finally, I don't have time to talk about this, but we have conducted intervention studies in China and India, and we found that if you replace white rice with brown rice with whole grain, you can have multiple health benefits in terms of diabetes prevention and management. So, thank you very much.
So, thank you very much, Fran. We will continue now with Sirius Kesaris. Sirius is actually the heart of the hands of the bread making and the owner and master baker of Sirius Bakery, which is here in Kalamata. Sirius embodies the marriage of both tradition and innovation, and his presentation will take us deep into the craft of slow fermentation, an art that has not only flavor but also has smell and texture, and but also enhances digestibility and a high nutritional quality for his final products. So, Sirius, now you can start. We are lucky because Sirius has also a tasting experience for us here today. He has brought 3-flour sourdough made with white, whole wheat and rye, a robust 100% rye sourdough, and the beloved whole grain Paximadia made with natural fermentation. And so you can all try this today. Sirius, you can start.
Γεια σας, ονομάζομαι Σύριος Κέσαρης, είμαι τρίτης γενιάς αρτοπιός. Για το αρτοπείο, και αυτά είναι τα προϊόντα που φτιάχνω στο αρτοπείο. Τώρα αυτό που ήθελα να ξεκινήσω να πω είναι ότι το αρτοπείο ξεκίνησε από τον παππού μου. Ο παππούς μου γύρισε όλη την Ελλάδα πριν το 30 και μάζεψε τεχνικές από όλη την Ελλάδα και άνοιξε το δικό του αρτοπείο το 30. Βέβαια, μετά από τον παππού μου ήρθε ο πατέρας μου, πήρε το αρτοπείο και ξεκίνησε η εμπορική μαγιά να είναι διαδεδομένη γενικότερα στην Ελλάδα. Οπότε, για λόγω της γρήγορης ζύμωσης και επειδή ήθελαν να καλύψουν την ποσότητα ψωμιού που χρειαζόταν, όλοι ξεχάσανε τις παλιές τεχνικές, την αργή ορίμανση, τα προζύμια, όλες τις διαδικασίες και οι περισσότεροι αρτοποί κάνανε ψωμιά ταχείας ζύμωσης. Οπότε όλη η γνώση σιγά σιγά άρχισαν να χάνεται. Βέβαια τώρα έχουμε ξεκινήσει να κάνουμε πάλι αργή ορίμανση, πάλι προζυμένα ψωμιά. Αυτά που δοκιμάζετε τώρα είναι ένα ψωμί που έχει 3 λέβια μέσα, έχει σίκαλη, λευκό και ολικής σε αναλογίες, περισσότερο είναι ολικής. Η τεχνική που χρησιμοποιούμε είναι η αργής ορίμανσης, δηλαδή ξεκινάμε από το ζύμωμα. Το ζύμωμα μας έχει 2 στάδια. Είναι η αυτόλυση. Κάνουμε την αυτόλυση η οποία δίνει πιο υγρή ψύχα. Στην ουσία ανακατεύουμε το αλεύρι με το νερό. Αυτό μας δίνει πιο υγρή ψύχα, οπότε έχει μεγαλύτερη διασημότητα, καλύτερα αρώματα και διάρκεια. Η ζύμωση πάλι γίνεται με έναν ειδικό τρόπο για να αναδεικνύονται τα αρώματα και η γεύση. Μετά, σαν όλη η ζύμη μπαίνει στο ψυγείο στους 4 βαθμούς, 4-5 βαθμούς για 24 ώρες, 12 με 24 ώρες. Μετά κόβεται, πλάθεται σε κομμάτια. Πάλι και εκεί υπάρχει μια ιδιαίτερη διαδικασία, δεν πρέπει να το σφίξει και να το ζυμάρει, να το σφίξει τόσο όσο για να κάνει αυτή την ψέλωση που θέλουμε. Και την τρίτη μέρα θα μείνει άλλο ένα 24ωρο στο ψυγείο και την τρίτη μέρα θα ψηθεί. Οπότε καταλαβαίνετε ότι όλη αυτή η διαδικασία είναι λίγο δύσκολο και χρονοβόρο να γίνει. Αλλά αν βάλεις τους χρόνους σωστά και ρυθμίσεις έτσι την παραγωγή σου, είναι εύκολο να κάνεις μια παραγωγή με αργής ορίμανσης ψωμιά. Το άλλο τοξικό που δοκιμάσατε, το πιο σκούρο, είναι με σίκαλη, 100% σίκαλη, πάλι μόνο προζύμι. Είναι σχεδόν η ίδια διαδικασία, απλά επειδή η σίκαλη είναι χαμηλή σε γλουτένη, κάνουμε μια διαδικασία στην αυτόλυση όπου βάζουμε νερό σε θερμοκρασία γύρω στους 45 βαθμούς, οπότε να κάνουμε ζελατινοποίηση του αμύλου, γιατί περιέχει άμυλο, οπότε για να δώσει αυτό που χρειαζόμαστε. Και μετά η διαδικασία είναι η ίδια σχεδόν. Μετά έχουμε τα παξιμάδια, που και αυτά έχουν προζύμι, δεν έχουν καθόλου αμύλο, θα είναι μόνο προζύμι. Είναι σχεδόν η ίδια διαδικασία, μόνο που το παξιμάδι ψήνεται και δεύτερη φορά, ώστε να φύγουν όλες οι υγρασίες και να γίνει αυτό το γραμμένο που βλέπουμε. Βέβαια, αυτά είναι λίγο πιο σκληρά, δεν είναι τόσο αφράτα όσο τα. Γιατί υπάρχουν δύο. Τα πιο αφράτα και τα πιο σκληρά. Αυτά θέλουν βρέξιμο ή λίγο λάδι ή λίγο ξύλο. Αυτά θέλω εδώ να πω. Λοιπόν, θέλω να σας κόψω βασικά ένα σωλή να το δείτε. Λοιπόν, αυτή είναι η σίκαλη. Ψέλωση. Λοιπόν, εδώ έχουμε χρησιμοποιήσει, είμαστε στο 70% υγρασία και στα δύο ψωμιά. Δηλαδή στο 1 κιλό αλεύρι είναι 700 γραμμάρια νερό. Αυτή πάνω κάτω είναι η τεχνική. Από εκεί και πέρα, η αργή ορίμανση, αυτό που μας δίνει σαν ωφέλη, είναι ότι δίνουμε το χρόνο στην ουσία, στο προζύμι και στους ζυμομύκητες να φάνε περισσότερο από τα ζάχαρα του αλεύρι. Το αλεύρι έχει ζάχαρα, οπότε όσο αφήνεις την διαδικασία με τον χρόνο της να οριμάσει, δίνεις τον χρόνο λοιπόν στους μικροοργανισμούς να καταναλώσουν περισσότερο και να αναπτυχθούν σωστά, οπότε όταν το τελικό προϊόν να έχει έρθει σε μια ισορροπία, γιατί έχει να κάνει και με το pH, για να έχει σε μια ισορροπία τέλος πάντων και να είναι ισορροπημένο και να μην έχουμε. Δίνουμε μερικές φορές, έχουμε ετοιμάσει ψωμιά, το οποίο μπορεί να σας είναι λίγο πιο βαρύ, να κάνουμε στο μάχη και έτσι. Αυτό είναι επειδή έχουμε, όταν κάνεις την γρήγορη ζύμωση. Όταν κάνεις την γρήγορη ζύμωση, σημαίνει αυτό το. Θέλω να το δοκιμάσετε, αν έχετε κάποια ερώτηση ή κάτι.
Το παξιμάδι, από τι αέρι το κάνατε?
Το παξιμάδι αυτό έχει κρυθάρι, ολικής και λευκό.
Ουσιαστικά δηλαδή, το ξεκινήσατε τη ζύμωση, το αφήσατε να ζελατινοποιηθεί, να τραβήξει το νερό.
Αφήσαμε το νερό με το αλεύρι, μόνο νερό και αλεύρι. Κάναμε ένα ανακάτεμα στην ουσία, όχι ζύμωμα. Απλά μόνο και μόνο για να απορροφηθεί καλύτερα, γιατί όταν έχουμε ανεβάσει 70% υγρασία, για να κρατηθεί και μετά να βγει σωστό το ζυμάρι μας και να μπορούμε να το δουλέψουμε, πρέπει να έχει εισχωρήσει καλά μέσα το νερό, οπότε να μπορούμε να κάνουμε τη διαδικασία.
Και μου έκανε πάρα πολύ εντύπωση η διαδικασία του ψυγείου. Αυτό ήταν που μας εντυπωσίασε πολύ.
Γενικότερα θέλουμε ελεγχόμενες θερμοκρασίες, οπότε αυτό βάλουμε στο ψυγείο. Και γενικότερα θέλουμε χαμηλές θερμοκρασίες για να μην αναπτυχθεί στις 48 ώρες που θα γίνει η ζύμωση.
Γιατί ουσιαστικά σταματάει τη ζύμωση.
Δεν σταματάει, στους 5 βαθμούς γίνεται η ζύμωση, αλλά γίνεται πιο αργά.
Πώς καταλήξατε ότι οι 45 βαθμοί Κελσίου είναι καλοί για να ζελατινοποιηθεί το άρρωστο άνθρωπο?
Βασικά θέλει παραπάνω, κανονικά είναι γύρω στους 85 νομίζω, αλλά εγώ όπως το έχω δοκιμάσει είναι ιδανικό. Δεν μου βγαίνει σωστό το αποτέλεσμα, οπότε έχω καταλήξει αυτούς τους βαθμούς. Λόγω εμπειρίας δεν σαν ήξερα ότι ήταν παραπάνω, αλλά δεν μου έβγαινε σωστό.
We will have time after the workshop when it finishes with all the presentations to have a bigger discussion. Thank you, Sirius, very much. Really. It's now time to make a switch with the presentations, with the presenters. Yes, we will continue with continue with Miguel. Miguel Martinez Gonzalez, who is actually a professor of preventive medicine in the University of Navarra and an adjunct professor at Harvard University. His research on the Mediterranean diet, and he will reflect on the role of whole grains and fermented breads within broader dietary patterns. So please.
Thank you very much. My voice is in not very good shape. I'll try to do my best. Thank you. So, I think that one of the greatest advantages of Paximadia and slow fermentation is the replacement issue. So, in nutrition, replacement is very important because this whole grain bread is replacing hyperpalatable white bread, white cereal. In Spain, we have a very large consumption of white bread. It is the common staple, so almost 50% of carbohydrates come from cereals and grains in Spain, and mostly more than 50% of all calories come from white bread. So we have a problem with white bread. I'm going to present this all a very interesting experiment. There is just changing with the same amount of calories, with the same type of diet, changing the glycemic load and seeing how are the spikes. In red you have the diet 1, that was the diet with the highest glycemic load. Glycemic load is the product of the glycemic index times the amount of carbohydrates in the diet. So you see these spikes are problematic because they induce insulin resistance, they get exhausted the pancreas, and they have problems related to many chronic diseases. So this is just one dimension. As Frank has mentioned, we have the dimension of fiber also, the glycemic index, and whole grains. So we decided to combine these 4 dimensions in an index of overall carbohydrate quality. So the carbohydrate quality index includes the proportion of solid carbohydrates, because liquid carbohydrates are more likely to create these spikes of glucose and also insulin, fiber, glycemic index, and the proportion between refined and whole grains. So with these 4 dimensions, we combine them in the carbohydrate quality index. So our rationale for this is that the quality of carbohydrates is more important than the quantity of carbohydrates. So we produced this index with the quintiles, so we gave positive points to more fiber, more whole grains, less glycemic index, and less liquid carbohydrates. So we developed this in the Seguimiento Universidad de Navarra, in the SUN cohort, with 17,000 participants, and we look at the relationship between tertiles of this carbohydrate quality index and the risk of cardiovascular disease after more than 10 years follow-up of these 17,000 participants. And you see very strong reduction in the risk, especially for those in the highest category of the carbohydrate quality index. So Paximadia and other sort of breads made with whole grains and with long fermentation, they improve the quality of carbohydrates. So, and then we also developed a metabolomic signature of the carbohydrate quality index in this paper. And also we saw that this carbohydrate quality index was associated with a lower risk of developing incidence of obesity in this cohort, and also less weight change. So they are very helpful for increasing the carbohydrate quality index to avoid weight gain. And also we saw that visceral fat deposition and other adiposity indicators measured with DEXA, objectively measured in the Predimed cohort, the Predimed Plus cohort, were associated with higher quality, carbohydrate quality index. And also we were able to show that the carbohydrate quality index was a predictor of a lower risk of gestational diabetes. So and then breast cancer. So a better quality of carbohydrates was associated with a lower risk of breast cancer and also other cancers associated with obesity. So we have here a very powerful way of preventing chronic diseases with the improvement in the quality of carbohydrates with these 4 dimensions. So this is important. And finally, we also saw that as we reduce these chronic diseases, longevity is improved. So we also saw all-cause mortality went down when the carbohydrate quality index was better. But this is, everything here is observational. So we need to move forward, and we have conducted a very large study in Spain, that is the Predimed Plus. It's a new study, Predimed Plus. When we compare the traditional Mediterranean diet, that is a strong, a very challenging comparator, that was what we did in Predimed, but we wanted to go beyond Predimed with a new study that we added a diet and lifestyle intervention with the behavioral and motivational support to reduce weight in people with metabolic syndrome, physical activity, and an energy-reduced Mediterranean diet with a special emphasis in the quality of carbohydrates. That was something very special in Predimed Plus. So, in the 17 items that we gave for the energy-reduced Mediterranean diet, with improvement in carbohydrate quality, we reduce a lot the amount of sugary beverages. We reduce white bread a lot. That was not done in Predimed 1. We increase whole grains, and we reduce other cereals and grains and rice, white rice, in the intervention. So we were doing this intervention for 6 years with almost 7,000 participants. So what we saw in a subset of participants, we measured the visceral fat, and with the intervention, always versus a strong control that was the Mediterranean diet. So we went beyond the Mediterranean diet. This is the meaning of plus, going beyond. So we saw a reduction in visceral fat and an increase in lean mass. So this is more muscle, less fat in the body. With this intervention, changing the quality of carbohydrates as the main topic in the dietary intervention. And also, this has not been published yet, the weight loss after all this long follow-up period, 6 years, was maintained with the intervention. There wasn't any weight regain in our participants. Usually in weight loss trials you have after 6 months or 1 year a regain. And then we saw in this paper what was the association between changes in the quality of carbohydrates and changes in the main risk factors for chronic disease. So we compared the extremes of change, the quintiles. So we were looking at the quintiles of change in carbohydrate quality index and the quintile and the amount of change in cardiovascular risk factors. You see, weight went down, waist went down, systolic blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure, fasting blood glucose, glycated hemoglobin. So with these 4 dimensions of the carbohydrate quality index, there were no significant differences in cholesterol and LDL cholesterol. After 1 year, we did see advantages in HDL cholesterol when it went in the right direction, and the ratio of total cholesterol to HDL, the triglycerides and glucose index, and the triglycerides and glucose waist circumference index. They are markers of insulin resistance. You see, they went down a lot with the changes in the improvement in the quality of carbohydrates. So this was an editorial in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition devoted to this paper. So in the editorial, Mark Pereira says that this is a high quality follow-up with intervention, with randomization, and is particularly strong about this study is the large number of participants in this study and the continuity of the dietary intervention. So we are not just collecting data, we are changing the overall dietary pattern. And Mark Pereira says, when complete, the analysis of Predimed Plus will help us to understand better. So, is it completed? So, now can the new thing. So this was published some month on 26th of August in Annals of Internal Medicine. So you have here the intervention and the control group. This is the first paper published with a clinical endpoint after more than 6 years follow-up. And we saw, you see in green, the reduction in diabetes in participants who were not diabetic at baseline. So this is evidence, strong evidence, because this is a randomized trial of the reduction of diabetes, of the incidence of diabetes. The relative risk was 0.69, so it is 31% lower risk. Always against a strong comparator. A very challenging situation, because what we did in the red line is the Predimed intervention in the Mediterranean diet. But now we have a lot of other diseases that we are working on them. So you see the cases of new diseases that we have collected so far for many other endpoints. So everything here is in the pipeline. So we will produce new results in the upcoming months and years. We have a lot of work to do in order to show how this change in the quality of carbohydrates can improve and reduce the risk of the complication of diabetes, atrial fibrillation, depression, osteoporotic fracture, and so on. So we have like a gold mine here for the future to obtain very good evidence on the association of the quality of carbohydrates with the risk of chronic disease. Thank you very much.
And now, last but not least, Arte. He's the founder and CEO of Crate. The Food is Island, which is based in Athens. Aris brings the lens of entrepreneurship, food innovation and sustainability. And he will now explore how traditional products like tacos and Paximadia can be reimagined in modern market while preserving their health benefits and cultural value. So, Aris, you can start.
Yes, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for staying up so late time. So I will present to you an ancient cereal made contemporary, and this is the Taco Bites. First of all, our mission as a company is delicious nutrition. Food is not fuel, and what we really, and our nourishment must be really mouth-watering. And what we wish to do is to promote the Cretan way of life, the Cretan diet, as a joyous, happier, and healthier, and more nutritious way of living. So I will go very quickly through that. The important take is the pre-diabetes and the diabetes problem in the US. Every 10% increase of ultra-processed foods increases the risk of early death by 14%, and the US crisis is global. 11 million people die every year because of the ultra-processed foods. So let's change the way we eat breakfast, brunch, lunch and dinner, and introduce to the world the Cretan breakfast book. Tacos has been voted, the taco salad, the original tacos, has been voted by Taste Atlas for 2 years in a row as best salad in the world. It is based on a dried rusk. Food drying is a technique that humanity has invented from the very beginning, 12,000 years before Christ. Tacos was the replacement of fresh bread for the shepherds and for the sailors leaving the island to go for a long time without possibility to get fresh bread. And the Cretan taco salad is a base of a rusk, very hard dried bread, with grated tomatoes, grated cheese, and olive oil and oregano. So the Cretan taco salad is really mouth-watering. It's a feast of flavors, aromas, and textures. And it it is a superfood as well. Fiber, lycopene from the tomatoes, protein from the goats and sheep's milk, cheese, antioxidants from the olive oil, and the microbial from the oregano. But people go back home after enjoying it in Greece. Nobody has ever reproduced it. Why? Because this big piece of dried bread is very difficult to sell. First of all, it's very inconvenient. If you bite on it, it will go all over. And then, if you sell it in the US, somebody will forget to wet it first, will break a tooth, $5,000 dentist bill. So we're thinking, how can we transform this and make it very easy? You know, people to enjoy it with a bowl and a spoon while walking, make it, you know, a comfort food. And this is it. We created the Cretan breakfast tacos bowl, the original on the left, on the right what we did. We played very important role in the ingredients. We have real sourdough, 24 hours we wait before we start producing the product. Whole grain, barley, rye and wheat. No added sugar, no added salt, a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, a little bit of honey. And we created a range because we thought, okay, where are we going to launch this in the international markets? And then the developments in the US and Kennedy taking over FDA and declaring the war to ultra-processed foods gave us the idea we will put it in a box, in a cereal box, and we will put it in the aisle of cereals. So we created 4 items. The classic, a high protein one with 20% protein coming from oat and fava beans. And then we said, okay, but if we want to be in the breakfast cereal, we must have sweet options as well. So we created the taco bites with the raisins and carob, and the 4th one with cacao, tahini, and carob. And now, at lunch, I don't know if you tasted this. Okay, this is made with our protein taco bowl, and the recipe has 7 health claims. Source of protein, high in fiber, source of magnesium, zinc, potassium and phosphorus, and unsaturated fatty acids. No sugar here, we just added honey. And then here you can see the total phenolic count of our taco bites, 2 of our taco bites versus traditional breakfast cereals, cornflakes and muesli. Now here you want, in this column, the higher the better, because this is the total phenolic count, and you can see the taco bites raising, you can see also the classic versus breakfast cereal and muesli. And then in the other 2 columns, you want to see the activity against free radicals, and there, the higher the number, the better. So, the lower the number, better. And you can see here the taco bite raising is amazingly low compared to breakfast cereal and muesli. And last but not least, the traditional Cretan tacos, the recipe has also 3 health claims: source of fiber, source of vitamin C, and unsaturated fatty acids. Thank you very much.
All the information and your enthusiasm actually made us want to taste everything. And we were lucky because, yes, he had a stand outside, and for anyone who hasn't tried it yet, should try it later. So now we can continue with some questions, so feel free to ask everyone any of the presenters. Yes?
I have a question
Yes,
for Frank and from Miguel. I have read a study about gluten, and I understand, or this was in the study, that a normal slice of bread has 124,000 parts per million gluten. The same slice of bread with sourdough goes down to 200 parts per million. It's an amazing difference, and I really want to know, first of all, do you confirm that? And can you please explain it?
Right. So, gluten is, part of cereals, and it's like protein. And when you make sourdough, because of the natural yeast and the combination of lactic acid bacteria, so those microbes eat gluten in the bread and also degrade some of the fibers and some other components of bread, like the phytate. But you are right, the amount of gluten is significantly reduced in sourdough compared to regular bread. But in terms of clinical implications, I think for people with celiac disease, they cannot eat sourdough because it still has some gluten. But for some people who are intolerant of gluten or sensitive to gluten, they don't have celiac disease, because celiac disease is autoimmune disease. If they are sensitive to gluten, and then this may be okay, the sourdough. And also for people who have GI conditions, inflammatory bowel disease, they are also sensitive to gluten, and the sourdough can help to reduce their symptoms. So yeah, you're right. This is a very significant improvement with respect to gluten sensitivity. Thank you.
Yes. I agree. There is also the issue that there is a lot of variability in for how long the fermentation lasts, and also the acidity, how the pH is going down when you do the sourdough fermentation. So when the pH, the acidity goes, the pH goes down to less than 4.5, some proteases, the enzymes, internal enzymes in the grains, are able to degrade some proteins, and also the gluten proteins that are resistant to the human enzymes in the gastrointestinal tract. So this is another mechanism. So in Spain we have a law about bread, recent law. So in the law it says that you cannot label any bread as sourdough unless the fermentation lasts 15 hours and 15 hours, and the amount of sourdough in the bread needs to be at least 15%. And so this is the lack of a standardization that is in many countries. There is not a standardization of what is exactly sourdough bread.
Okay, does anyone have any question from the audience? To anyone, to Sirius or to Frank or to Iris and Miguel? I would like to ask something again to both of you. Are there specific types of whole grains or fermentation methods that you have seen from the evidence that are promoting better the health or decrease some factors in different diseases? For example, different types of grains, or in combination with the fermentation method, that it's better? Or it's a too general question to be answered?
Well, I don't think we have this kind of granularity of the evidence yet, because fermentation, the slow fermentation, certainly improved the nutrition quality of the bread. And for some of the whole grains that widely consumed in other populations, like quinoa and brown rice and barley, typically they're not fermented. Those are just regularly consumed. And we don't have any evidence whether fermentation can actually improve the quality of nutrition quality of those products. But because overall consumption of whole grains is so low in most populations, so any increase in whole grain consumption, whether it's fermented or not fermented, I think it's going to have an important public health impact.
And now, Alice, I would also have a question for you. how difficult or how easy is for you to go to different markets rather than the Mediterranean market, which are very known to this kind of food, the Paximadia, for example, and the tacos? Is it easy for the consumers to be very open to this new kind of food, like Paximadia, or is it difficult for you?
Well, we did the whole process, and the innovation was done in order to get out of the traditional market, because in Greece and also in the Mediterranean basin, people understand rusk very well and they know how to use it. But you have to make it friendly for people outside the Mediterranean area, so they can start using a better product that gives them a lot of different nutritional possibilities and great and very tasty bowls where they can combine a lot of things, or improve croutons that they use in their salads that are also definition of ultra-processed foods. The difficulty is the same that with any other Greek or Mediterranean product. To make it in the international markets, you have to do promotion, you have to explain your product, you have to go to the distribution networks, and especially if you have a product like that that is more innovative, you have to be very strong, you have to communicate and explain to people, you don't expect people to understand. So, but this is a normal process if you want to launch a product in the international markets.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing your products in Boston.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you.
Okay, there's a question in the audience.
Two questions basically. The one is, in the Paximadia, does the starch revert to resistant starch? And this is why it drops the GI, and because basically they're the same process. So the extra step, what difference does it make? And the only thing I can imagine is to revert it to resistant starch. Am I right or am I wrong?
I don't think there is a conversion to resistant starch through the fermentation process. So, of course,
with the baking in Paximadia, because in the Paximadia there is a final baking step.
that I'm not sure. So, I think the yeast and also lactic acid, of course, will degrade some of the starches. That's why you see a lot of holes in the bread. And also because of the fermentation, non-fermentation process, the bacteria and also yeast produce many bioactive compounds called postbiotics. So we have prebiotics, which are fiber-resistant starch, we have probiotics, which are the bacteria, and then postbiotics are the biochemical compounds produced by the microbes during the non-fermentation process. And those include lactic acid, that's why you taste a little sour when you eat the sourdough. And also many other bioactive compounds that may reduce the glycemic response when you consume this type of bread. So this type of postbiotics are very special for sourdough, and probably even more for the rusks because of the traditional way of making this kind of bread, and also in many situations use barley, right? Use barley, which has more fiber and more special type of fiber called beta-glucan, which has beneficial effects in terms of reducing your blood sugar response and also reduce your bad cholesterol.
That was the second question. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay.
Yes, there are some studies suggesting that, supporting that the long fermentation in the sourdough bread increases the amount of resistant starch, but it is not very long, so not all studies are consistent. There is a review by Vera de Amico, and she reviews all the studies, and there is inconsistencies in this, but some studies, of course, have shown that there is a higher amount of resistant starch after the so-called fermentation, but after several days it is lost.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other question? Yes?
Θα κάνω την ερώτησή μου στα ελληνικά. Σε Άγιο Πόνος, λοιπόν, θέλω να ρωτήσω σε ό,τι αφορά τις ποικιλίες των σιτηρών. Υπάρχουν κάποιες διαφορές, δηλαδή εμείς εδώ τα τελευταία χρόνια ακούμε για το σιτάρι ζέας, ακούμε για το μονόκοκο ή το δίκοκο, το ντίνκελ όπως λέγεται. Άρα λοιπόν σε ό,τι αφορά αυτές τις σοβαρές παραμέτρους για τις οποίες μίλησαν οι ειδικοί, την αργή ζύμωση, την αργή ορίμανση, το ανθεκτικό άμυλο ή το γλυκαιμικό δίκτυο, έχουν κάνει πειράματα σε σχέση με τις ποικιλίες, μήπως υπάρχουν διαφορές. Αυτό είναι το ερώτημα. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
That's a very complicated question because she's asking whether different type of wheat can make a difference. I mean, as far as I know, the type of wheat flour used in Italy, Semolina, which is commonly used to make pasta, has relatively lower glycemic index compared to the regular white flour, and probably has a high amount of fiber. So that's why the traditional pasta has much lower glycemic index than white bread or white rice. But I don't know whether this kind of wheat is also used to make Paximadia.
Βασικά δεν χρησιμοποιούμε. Όχι, χρησιμοποιούμε, τουλάχιστον εγώ δεν έχω δουλέψει ποτέ το δίκοκο ούτε το ντίγγελ. Παραδοσιακά δουλεύουμε με κρυθάρι, πολυκής και λευκό. Όσο και τις διαφορές, τουλάχιστον εγώ δεν το έχω δοκιμάσει, γιατί δεν ασχολήθηκα ποτέ ούτε με το δίκοκο, ας πούμε, ούτε με το ντίγγελ.
Okay, thank you for your answers. If there's no other question, I think that we can finish today's workshop. It was a really nice workshop. We were gathered here from different fields and different experts from the science, from the bakery and the art making, and of course with Aris from the market. And I think that a lot of questions have been made, and I hope that the answers actually were very satisfied for all of you. It was really satisfied for all of us being here today, and thank you for being until that late.